The Delphi case may have just gotten the break we've been waiting for, and we are here to deliver it to you straight. If you haven't heard of it yet, then you're in the perfect place. We are talking about the murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. We are your hosts, Helen Allen
and Sherry Ferreira.
This is The Chalk Line.
Good evening, everyone, and the highlights of the news this Thursday.
So they're now investigating the matter as a crime scene, and they do suspect foul play. When asked by a reporter, the reporter said, "Why do you believe there's foul play?" Kim Riley responded, quote, "Just the way the bodies were found. That's about all I can say at this point in time." So I'm only to assume that they were killed in a pretty gruesome way, whether that be like they were killed with a weapon, like a gun or a knife, or yeah. I think it just means basically like these girls did not just lay down and die in the elements, you know what I mean?
Or even if the wounds that they did sustain were like pretty vicious, like you could almost tell that it was by someone who did it with malice or with anger.
Exactly.
And, like,
not just like one of them fell, the other one, like, you know, it was just... She also then says that they were found on the edge of the water, but not in the water. Now, there's like this kind of creek. The best way I can describe the bridge and this area that they were found in is like, so there's this bridge, and then beside it, there's this big hill. And then at the bottom of the hill, there's kind of this like creek thing. And now the girls were found on the opposite side of the creek. So they had crossed it, essentially. So... she said they were found on the edge of the water, but not in the water. Now, they also release a picture that Libby, our hero, took of the suspect. In the released picture, it is believed that Libby's perspective is from the southeastern side of the bridge, so the dead-end side.
Yeah.
And it's looking back towards the northwestern side of the bridge. Now, it's important to note what that would be like for them standing at that dead-end side. The man is coming towards them in the picture. So, you know, many people online and everybody that's looked into this kind of believe that the girls were cornered by him at that point.
Yeah.
There is also audio released and played at this press conference that Libby also took. According to them... Oh, actually, I would like everybody to listen very closely to it and let us know what you think you heard. Okay, so now that you've heard it, I don't know what you're thinking, but to me, I was like, what is that? I remember the first time I heard this sound, I was like, okay, what are we supposed to do with that? Mm-hmm. Police say that this man is saying down the hill. And then you listen to it back and you're like, oh, of course. Police are being very strategic about what they're releasing to us.
And I think this is only a part of the entire clip that was recorded.
It's just a small piece. So I am to believe that police know because of context why it says down the hill. And, you know, they know more than us at this point. So I do believe that they... And, you know, also, they were found down the hill. So it would make sense that he's directing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we hear. And they also release a public sketch of a man to look out for. Now, this sketch has, like, it's a man wearing a hat, and he's, like, a little heavy set, and he has, like, a beard and kind of, like, a round nose and, like, hooded eyes. But he could be, like, any man you've ever seen. In my opinion, this sketch helps no one.
At all. And it's crazy to think that we have all this evidence and still no suspect.
I mean, Libby worked hard. We cannot let her down.
I know. And it's just crazy that she had, like, is it the wherewithal? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Like, the sound of mind in that moment to get all these clues.
Because my would have been frazzled as hell. I would have been like, he's going to take my phone and then it's going to be nothing. I wouldn't have done anything. And so I have to give it to her. She's just a little girl and she was so smart to feel a bad vibe and do something smart about it. By February 15th, the autopsies are done. Now, because this case isn't closed and they are still keeping much of the information private, the autopsy is still sealed, so we do not know to this day what the manner of death was. Well. So, yeah, it's very frustrating, but also we should talk about how much integrity this case has. You know, the police are working extremely hard, and I kind of love that they're not just, like, making this, like, a horse and pony show, being like, who can tell me who this is? Like, they're not releasing anything that could potentially mess up the investigation. They want to nail this guy as soon as they see him.
And I know that frustrates a couple of people who have covered this case, just being like, why won't they tell us? And it's like, there's a reason for
because
it. Because
I'm not a police officer, and what can I do when I know that information? But you know what they can't do? They can't really have probable cause to arrest somebody if the only thing that person said in a confession is public knowledge. You know what I'm saying?
And
they want something to be like, oh, only the killer would know that because only the killer was there, and that's not public information.
Exactly, and that's not something the public should have to know about. That's why it's like when they release stuff like this and you're like, why didn't they release this sooner? Like, what were you, Rebecca?
Be grateful for the 3 words they did release. Yeah. They didn't have to do that. Now, about 2 years later, police have been working harder than ever, and they hold another press conference. Quote, "We also believe this person is from Delphi currently or has previously lived here, visits Delphi on a regular basis, or works here. We believe this person is currently between the age range of 18 and 40, but might appear younger than his true age." That quote that was said at the press conference is so haunting to me. I will talk about it a little bit after too, but mostly it's haunting to me because if they believe that the person at this point 2 years later could have been 18, then that means that they thought it could have potentially been a high schooler. You know what I'm saying? That is so scary to me because it never crossed my mind.
And I mean, you think about it, like, who else than a high schooler, or maybe someone that even follows them, would know where they are?
Yeah.
Because they did post the picture of her looking down.
We will get into that.
Ah!
Okay, so when it came to making a podcast, we knew what we wanted to do, but we just didn't really know how to execute it. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from this podcast too, like with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So at this press conference, they also introduced a new sketch. Now keep in mind, this is 2 years later. So people have been going around town, eyeing everybody with a goatee and a hat, being like, it was you. Mm-hmm. People are turning in their fathers, their boyfriends, their husbands. I'm sure everybody was seeing therapists.
If I remember correctly, I think it was in the Down the Hill where they covered this case that just people were like giving like interviews and they're like, I was suspicious of everyone.
They turned in the sheriff at one point.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right. And didn't he respond? He was like, well,
he was like, thank you. He was like, I would be disappointed if they didn't turn me in. I was like, okay, thank you. I mean, you know this man has so much respect for the process because he's like, good, thank you. I looked a little bit like that man and someone should have turned me in. You know what? In fact, thank you.
Thank you.
I love that.
Crazy.
So, yeah, it's been 2 years of people turning people in for that sketch and they're like, we have a new one actually. Mm-hmm. To me, the new sketch looks less detailed, which is interesting, and I have no idea why, but I do kind of wonder about it. But here's the thing. They had this initial sketch the entire time. So something must have happened for them to kind of switch gears, you know, and say, oh, maybe it actually wasn't that person. And I do believe, and please do not quote me on this, but during the press conference, I'm pretty sure they make it clear that these sketches are not the same man.
Yeah.
They thought it was the man in the hat with the goatee, and then they came forward to new information, and they're like, oh, it's not that guy. So this new sketch of, like, a much younger looking person is who you're looking for. Yeah. It's not at all the man with the goatee and the hat. Now, another thing that they release at the press conference, is like a video. Turns out the screenshot of the Snapchat that Libby took was actually a video. So, police say that in the video, the girls talk about, like, quote, stuff girls talk about, which I'm like, what in God's name does that mean?
Right.
I don't know if they were talking about boys or what.
Right.
But
the chocolate sign they just painted? I mean,
know,
hello.
they're like, that was some of our best work. I just cannot get over that. People will be paying for that. No, but, so I think when they say they were talking about, quote, stuff girls talk about, I do think that they were talking about boys. And I want you to ask me about that a little later.
Got it.
But they do later mention a man that they noticed behind them on the bridge in this video. Sheriff Liesenby said that the video was taken as a precaution, so meaning that Liberty did just feel unsafe and turn the video on. And this is interesting. They advise everyone to watch the mannerisms of the way that the man in the video is walking. But then they're like, yeah, but he is walking weird because he's on that bridge, and remember that bridge is rickety, and so
yeah, it's not
he's
really
like not walking like he would if he was just on a sidewalk. Mm-hmm. So pay attention to his mannerisms, but he's not walking how he would ever walk.
Yeah, I'm like, are they insinuating that he has a limp or some sort of like?
See, my thing is,
impairment?
I'm just thinking that like maybe his mannerisms not necessarily the way he's stepping, but like if his head is turned a certain way, or his hands are in a pocket, or, you know, like things that you would kind of do while you're walking that's not necessarily walking. Mm-hmm. So I think that's maybe what they want us to pay attention to, but they maybe don't want us to pay attention to, like, where he's putting his feet, like his footing while he's walking, because they're like, this is a rickety bridge, and he is walking intentionally to, like, get over the pieces that are broken or whatever. At this press conference, they also address the killer. So a thing that's interesting about this, and it's very unconventional, they invited the public to the press conference.
Yeah.
Super unconventional. Everybody did have to, like, put down their addresses and their names and stuff just to, like, you know, like they say with volunteering, they just want to know who's going. And my thing is, I think it's probably like how a lot of times the killer will show up for the funeral.
That's what they're banking on.
I think they were hoping that the killer would show up for the press conference.
100%.
Because they think that this guy has a huge ego. And so they address the killer, and, you know, one thing I do have to say is that it was a little much at the point that he's like, I know that you have a conscience, and I know that, I don't know, he, like, talks about how, like, he thinks that the killer, like, deep down has a conscience, and I'm like, what are we trying to do here? I don't think that. I do not think that. If I would have been there taunting his I would have been like, we know it's you.
Like, I'm not gonna try to, like, appeal to the killer too much. Like,
right, and maybe would have also, like, hurt people. Like, family members that saw that being like,
I agree completely.
No, I don't think
like,
that
this did not have a conscience.
No,
he committed
absolutely
murder
not.
Of these two innocent little girls. He should be locked up and, as you say, throw away key.
Yeah.
So it's like...
But I do appreciate that he did address the killer to show, like, we're closer on to your tracks than you think we are.
Good.
And apparently they said that, like, everyone was looking around, like, all the reporters, as soon as he said that the killer was in the room, they were all like, is it you? Like, looking around at each other. And I was
you're not a reporter for the Delphi.
I would have stood up and been like, fess up. Who was it?
I can just imagine.
Which one of you? Take off your hats. Who was it?
I can just imagine your gasping like,
remove your glasses. I need to see your face. Lock the doors. No one's getting out of here.
So dramatic.
Another interesting thing that they released at this press conference is they describe the white male as being 5 feet 6 inches or 5'10" inches, somewhere between that. and weighing about 180 to 220 pounds with reddish brown hair. So essentially they gave us nothing because that's just a regular man. Maybe a little on the shorter side.
Who's maybe a ginger.
Yeah, like slightly. I don't... So, and they all are still looking for this driver that they had been looking for that was parked between 12 and 5 p.m., I guess in a sketchy way.
Okay.
And with all of this, they release a little more audio than what we had before. And they now play us a whopping 4 words.
Now you're saying a whopping.
And it's very clear at this point what is added. So I'm not even going to be like, play it first. But they add guys down the hill. So he says guys, then there's like ruffling and like inconsistent tech or whatever. Yeah. And then it says down the hill. And we'll play the clip for you now.
Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill. Guys. Down the hill.
Now, this doesn't really give us too much more. But they do reiterate that this is the same man. It's the same, maybe the same sentence. We don't really know. They don't specify. Yeah. But it's the same man. Some people speculate that guys and down the hill sounds like it's 2 different people talking. Weird. But it's not. It's the same man. And they have the video of it, so I know that they know that, you know?
For me, it almost, I know it's like a 1-word difference, like how much could that tell you? But it almost tells me because of the word guys and in the brief pause that he was like directing them until the point where they're like, oh, like I have a feeling I'm being followed. Then he's directing me. Like it's like a build up.
Well, and for me, them adding guys makes me think, first of all, they're younger. Mm-hmm. This suspect is younger than we thought. And second of all, this suspect is trying to kind of like befriend them. Yeah. Because you don't just call people you don't know guys.
Yeah, if you were there just to do that. It's almost like
they have, and I don't want to, this is me speculating completely, but it's almost like they have a relationship with the suspect because he's calling them guys.
Is this what you were like, bring back, like, oh, he might be younger kind of thing?
Yes, and remind me a little bit later.
Okay, I will. But I definitely agree that does sound completely plausible. Like, if it was an older man, he'd just be like, I feel like it'd be a little...
I think he would have said, like, kids or girls or, something a little bit more like, I'm above you. Mm-hmm. But guys felt like he was either relating to them, grooming almost. Them a little. Like, It just felt very personable, and that is the scariest thing to me. So, they do also ask Sheriff Libby if the attack was recorded, and he does say that it was not recorded. Okay. And there also is DNA evidence. They have recovered DNA from the scene. However, they have not made any official arrests. And I do think it's worth noting that so Sergeant Jerry Holman said, quote, "At every crime scene, you are going to have DNA. We're still working on identifying all of the DNA that we have here." Now, to me, this means they either don't have enough DNA to keep just, like, testing people's DNA. Mm-hmm. Because, DNA is not, like, something that they just have, like, an infinite amount of it. Every time you test DNA, you lose that DNA that you used. Yeah. So they either don't have an infinite amount and they want to wait until they're absolutely positive that this is the person before they test it. Yeah. Or they don't have DNA of many people. They have DNA of too many people because, remember, everybody in town was at that search. They could have every single person's DNA. So I don't really know what the DNA thing is, but I don't think it's worth getting too hung up on. Now, we are going to not bother diving into all of the people that have been named unofficially in this investigation because that's all of them. There are a few people that they looked into and that people speculate about, but honestly, the police have never officially declared a suspect, and I don't think it will do any justice to talk about them now.
Pointless.
However, this case was put back on our radar because of a development that may or may not check out, and I do think it's worth discussing. In July 2021, Carroll County imposed a total blackout on releasing any information about possible persons of interest. Now, I thought that was just that. But last week, I don't remember what I was watching. It could have been Good Morning America. I see this shirtless man on the screen, and they're like, has the Delphi case been solved?
What?
And I'm like, what in God's name? And I turn up the TV, and I'm like, what is going on? So apparently, police uncovered an online profile used to communicate with young girls using the name Anthony_Shots. Now, the man's photo used on the profile is not the person of interest. It's like this very jacked man who is part-time male model and also a police officer in Alaska.
So he's like a dream come true, basically, for some people.
Tons of selfies that he has had made readily available to this person who made the account. Mm-hmm. And the profile was used from 2016 to 2017 to solicit nude images from juvenile girls. Now, so we're referring to this suspect as Anthony Shots because at this point, I don't want to really necessarily say the suspect's name on our podcast just because, you know, he hasn't been arrested for this crime specifically. However, I actually just take that back right now because let's talk about this. He has been arrested for being an absolute scumbag, and whether or not he killed Libby and Abby,
he is trash.
He is going straight to hell, because as soon as you do anything to put little girls in harm, especially in a sexual manner, you can burn in hell. Mm-hmm. It's truly rot. Hold on, I'm looking up his name because I didn't even bother putting it in before. Oh my god, when you look up Shots, the first thing is COVID vaccine. I'm like, no! Okay, so he is named Keegan Anthony Klein, and I guess he is from Indiana. He's from Delphi, and he has solicited photos from so many girls and videos of them in very provocative manners. And you know I don't like talking about this stuff, but
yeah, we usually try to stray away from.
Yeah, so he is currently 27 years old, and he does, in his mugshot, he does have a beard, like the first sketch, and he is pretty heavy set, but you know, maybe COVID did him dirty. Yeah. He could have been a little lighter in 2017, who knows? But he was actually arrested, I want to say in 2017 or 2018, but it's not regarded to the case.
Yeah, completely. It's completely
his arrest was completely based on this Anthony_Shots profile and the messages that he said to the girls that he spoke with. However, I think it's interesting to talk about him in the case of the Delphi murders because remember, these girls were on Snapchat. And like I said, he maybe was younger. He maybe was grooming them like a sexual predator would. And maybe he was calling them guys because they already had a relationship online. And there's just, so I think by the time the police arrested him, he had already factory reset one of his phones, so it was kind of impossible to see if he had another profile or anything like that, if there was another way that he was communicating with the girls. So we don't know. And Libby's grandma does say that she does not think that they were communicating with anyone, but I'll tell you what, I've been 14 before, and my little sister's 14, and they are sketchy monsters when you're 14. And that's not... Everybody was 14, you're still like, you know, you could be a really great person and still be sketchy about what you do online because you don't know better. It's not because you're being intentional about it.
Let me tell you, everyone had a kick, all right? That's all I'm going to say. Everyone had a kick. Everyone had these messaging apps where you would message anyone, you didn't care how old they were. Honestly, everyone...
too, like, anonymous messaging was like it's first of all the bane of everybody's existence, but also it was like your favorite thing when you're 14. So I am not willing to exclude the fact that maybe they were talking to someone. And another thing that's important to say is that doesn't blame them, because any 14-year-old, no matter how smart, no matter how safe, can fall for this, because this is a smart adult that they are talking to. And this is a manipulative adult who can tell them things that make them trust them, and it's just the scariest in the entire world.
They're being taken advantage of.
Right. So that is just kind of, I mean, that's what we know. And I'm interested to see if anything comes forward with this Anthony Schatz case. They have not named him an official suspect in this case yet, but during the press conferences and, you know, anytime that the sheriff and the police speak, it does kind of sound like they have somebody in mind.
Mm-hmm. And it honestly makes me think that did they release this just for that? It is obviously a pretty huge break, but like they did say in a bunch of like news outlets that this did spur on a bunch of new tips for them.
Exactly.
Which is exactly what they want.
And well, that's the thing. They're asking for anybody who has been approached or spoken to by this Anthony Schatz profile, or anybody that maybe has like arranged a meet with him or anything like that, to come forward. And we will put that in our show notes where you can come forward if you have obviously spoken to them.
Any tips, just whatever
anything.
You know.
But it's just, you know, whether or not this is the break in the case, I feel like the police are hot on their tail, and whoever the killer is, they are no longer safe.
Yeah. I don't think they've ever been safe with this.
To be completely honest, since the minute that all of this started, the first press conference, the police sounded like they knew what they were doing and who they were looking for.
It almost makes me think that, exactly, like they know who they're looking for, but they just don't have enough evidence.
Right, they're building their case.
Which is one of the
things
ever.
too, though, that like if people are coming forward, they're just making their case stronger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and maybe the police are not rushing right now because this man is rotting in prison anyway.
Exactly.
So they're not like, we need to stop him from talking to anybody else. He won't be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Need to wait until the concrete.
I can't wait. So I needed to put this episode out now. And we will give you any updates as they come. Follow along with our Instagram, because as there are any more developments with this case, we will let you know. Thanks for listening. You can catch us on Instagram at The Chalkline Pod,
Twitter at The Chalkline Pod,
and follow along with our YouTube channel. The link is in our Instagram bio.
Tune in next Thursday for another story.